Hello everyone, welcome to our channel Public Cloud Design Tips and Tricks. In this channel, we generally discuss about public cloud design problem statements and their related solution. Today we are going to discuss about Azure Data Factory, SQL Server Integration Services, Integration Runtime. What is the problem statement? How to lift and shift existing SSIS workloads from on-premise towards Azure. Before that, let's try to understand what is Azure Data Factory. Azure Data Factory is a managed and serverless cloud services that builds for this complex hybrid ETL as well as ELT and data integration projects. What is integration runtime? If you look into the high level architecture of Azure Data Factory, the integration between the activity and linked services is getting done by the integration runtime. This is the basic fundamental definition of Azure Data Factory integration runtime. That means you can see here the activities like copy data, and you want to copy the data from linked services. That means where you have the linked services like Azure SQL services, or you have managed instances, and that's where you want to do the integration activities to copy the data from the storage to our SQL database or Synapse Analytics. There you can use the integration runtime. Now, let's try to understand SQL Server Integration Services. SQL Server Integration Services is the integration services, is a platform for building enterprise level data integration and data transformation solution. It is extremely useful for high performance ETL jobs. When to use it? To copy or download files, load data warehouse, cleanse and mine the data, and manage SQL Server objects and data. Now, Azure SSIS IR deployment model. There are two types of deployment model which is getting supported in Azure with SSIS IR. One is project deployment model, second is package deployment model. Project deployment model is nothing but running packages deployed into SSIS catalog, that means SSIS DB, hosted by Azure SQL database server or managed instance. That means it is inside your database server and managed instance. Whereas package deployment model is somewhere the SSIS packages are getting hosted or getting placed inside a file system, that means Azure File or SQL Server Database MSDB hosted by Azure SQL Managed Instance. That means it is outside your database server and it is inside a file system. The packages are. So that is the basic difference between the project deployment model and package deployment model. Now, when do you need SSIS IR with virtual network integration? The basic definition is when you have SSIS IR, that means it is getting hosted by completely managed by Microsoft, and you want to privately connect to the services which is getting exposed privately. You can think about simple scenario. First scenario, let's try to understand. That means you want to access on-premise data stores. That means you want to access the SSIS IR which is getting hosted in Azure, and it wants to connect to the on-premise data stores, and that is the connection which is a private connection. That time you need the virtual network integration. With the virtual network integration, with the express route, you connect securely to your on-premise system from your SSIS IR. Second is when you are using Azure SQL database or managed instances which is hosted by a private link endpoint, or it has IP firewall rules, or it has virtual network service endpoint. There you want to connect those PaaS services from your SSIS IR securely. Then you need a virtual network integration so that you can connect to the private link endpoint subnet, and from there you can connect securely to these services. Third one is you want to connect to Azure storage that is configured with private endpoint again, or IP firewall rules or virtual network service endpoint has been configured to that particular storage account. Then from SSIS IR environment, you want to go to the virtual network, and from the virtual network, you will connect to those private link endpoint to connect to the storage account. Then also the same applies to any other data stores which has the private endpoint, service endpoint, or IP firewalls. And the last one is you want to access other cloud data source resources that are configured with an IP firewall rules. So overall, if you look into it, if you want to connect to any private connection from your SSIS IR, you definitely need to have a virtual network integration. That is the theme of virtual network integration with SSIS IR. Now, there are two types of virtual network integration which is getting supported by Microsoft. One is standard, second is express. Now let's try to understand the difference between standard and express. There are various differences which has been explained. I have copied it from Microsoft portal. The major one I will try to cover. The biggest difference is to start SSIS IR with the express virtual network, it takes around 5 minutes of time, whereas with standard one it takes around 30 minutes of time. So that is the major difference. So be careful when you are selecting which version of injection that you want to use, whether you want to use the standard one or you want to use the express one. The second one is with Azure with Azure batch. So you need to have when you are using the virtual network permission, that time you need to have your virtual network subnet which should be delegated with Microsoft batch accounts, which is getting done by the express one. Whereas subnet must not be dedicated to Azure services in standard one, and there is no delegation needed. But here in express one, you need to have a delegation. It has some inbound traffic. With standard one, you are bound to provide the inbound traffic from your batch management service tag with 29876 port and 29877 port. We will see this in the next slide diagram. Whereas in express one, there is no inbound traffic needed, and outbound traffic towards 443, which is Azure cloud service tag, as a destination should be provided. Whereas in express route, 443 must be open to TCP traffic with data factory management service tag as a destination. There is no resource lock which is needed, and also SSIS IR per virtual network is unlimited. But here in express one, you need to have only one virtual network for SSIS IR. So these are all basic criteria when you are configuring the virtual network injection. Be careful and try to compare, and whichever is suitable for your use case, use that. Then the high level architecture that has been compared in the previous diagram, same we have extracted here from the Microsoft document. You can see with the standard one, you have two inbound traffics from Azure batch management network, as well as from MS DevOps network. And also here in case of injection, express network injection, there is no inbound traffic, it has only outbound traffic. And same applies here. You have your outbound traffic towards data factory management, storage, Azure Container Registry, ACR, Event Hub, Microsoft logging services, and CRL sites. Whereas the custom outbound traffic, that means where you want to connect to a storage account or a file system, there also you need to enable the outbound traffic. Same has been applied here. You can see here the outbound traffic is towards the storage account as well as the storage custom setup, and also with the private link endpoint you can connect to them. Whereas there is no inbound traffic, that we already understood, and these are all custom servers where DNS server and on-premise SQL data sources are also getting configured. So this is the high level comparison between the standard virtual network injection as well as express virtual network injection. I have covered all this information by following the Microsoft link. I will provide the link in the video description. Please follow the video description and use those links to get more information about the SSIS IR pattern. Yeah, thanks a lot for watching the video, and yeah, if you like the video, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.